We're now going to talk about teacher cognition, and now the focus is on you, teacher cognition. And in this session, which we're going to do quickly because it's just exploratory, it's just to create your awareness. So it's to create awareness, awareness raising. We want you to be aware of some of the things that we generally overlook, that we could have brilliant learners, but the teacher is driven by a belief system that makes them make choices that may not be the best choices. The teacher also has some assumptions that need to be challenged by they themselves. So, in this session, we're going to define teacher cognition. We're going to explore it a little bit using metaphors, and we're going to discuss the implication of this knowledge for teaching and learning. So, I have a question for you, and I want you to answer using your chat box. What is your metaphor for teaching? Okay, so a metaphor, teachers have, when in all cultures, we can describe things using metaphors. Okay, a metaphor is not a simile. For similes, we say he's as tall as a giant. No, that's not a metaphor. But a metaphor is substituting an idea or a thing with another thing. Okay, so for example, my metaphor for, let me see if I can think of, for strength might be a lion. Okay, that could be my metaphor. I want to talk about strength, and I could say he's such a lion in terms of his achievement. So when I use that word lion, it projects so many meanings and it can be interpreted. He's brave, he's strong, he's powerful, he's resilient. So I want you to choose a metaphor for teaching. How do you see teaching? What can you use to describe teaching? One word, a metaphor. Is it a house? Is it a plant? What is it? Teaching is what? So, what is teaching? Give me a metaphor for teaching. If you can't give me one word, use a sentence. Okay? But don't tell me the definition of teaching. That's not what I want. Just give me a metaphor, a description that is not direct. All right? I'm waiting for you guys. Give me a metaphor. Use your chat box. Or should I give you this as a poll? Okay, so maybe you're waiting for a poll. So I'm just going to ask you here. What is your metaphor for the act of teaching? So I'll put the act of teaching in brackets, the act in brackets. So it can be, what's your metaphor of for teaching? What is your metaphor for teaching? Or if you like, the act of teaching. Okay, so would you compare teaching with farming? With it, what would you think of? What do you think? Think about it. Okay, so someone's given me something already in the chat. Teaching is like changing the design of a house regularly. That's interesting. So someone says teaching is like changing the design of a house regularly. So I'm going to be exploring each of your metaphors. So she's described it in a different sort of way, but it's still a metaphor. It's changing the design of a house. And I'm going to explore it with you. What do you think that brings, the idea of changing the design of a house? So I'd ask you a lot of questions. You know, when you tell me that, the first thing I see is that you're somebody who believes in, just changing things all the time. But the frequency of changing the design of your house, what is the effect on your learners? When will you find the right design for your house? What is the impact, of this changing of designs? So it's good to improve your house, but if you're doing it frequently or regularly, what's the impact? Is every learner um, is every learner comfortable with the fact that you're always changing your methods? For example, the learner who has special needs. Let's look at children who are autistic, for example. They are children who like routine. So if you bring in rapid change into your classroom, you're going to affect children like that. They will be trying to get a hang of one thing and then suddenly it changes again. Okay, so it's a good idea. It's an interesting idea. So changing the design of a house is okay, but not too regularly, not too often. Okay, so that's not to say that you cannot change your teaching methods, but you should use a range of methods that learners are familiar with. Okay? So we're not saying that you should just use one teaching method, no, but use methods that your learners are comfortable and familiar with. But if today you come with something new, and they're just about to enjoy it, settle into it, they like this style, then you change it again, you know, then you change it again. After a while, you lose some of your learners. So you can use a range of teaching styles, okay, that the learners are familiar with. So let's explore the other metaphors. Somebody says teaching is like cooking. Okay, so I imagine that as a teacher, you like to add different ingredients, and this can be like activities, they could also be content, and you're mixing and you're tasting, you're checking to see, how sweet the outcome is. Okay, so great metaphor also. The only thing now is if you are not checking your cooking, you could overheat, you could overcook, you could even burn the food. Okay, so you've just changed it to gardening. Okay, so gardening, we're looking at gardening. The method of gardening is suggesting that your learners are growing, so you're attending, you're giving them all that they need to grow. You recognize that you cannot force them to learn. So they have to learn on their own. And what you do is to tend and then to give them whatever, like the fertilizers or the water, you weed the ground around them, you create the environment for them to learn. All right. Then here's another one. Teaching is like farming or grooming plants. Okay, so same thing, but when you talk about farming, there's a time for harvest. All right. So you are a patient, you're looking at teaching as a patient endeavor. You sow the seed and you just wait patiently, for the harvest. In between, you are tending the garden, you're taking out the weeds, you're watering the plants. So you're facilitating learning. You have an idea of teaching that is facilitation. Nation building, teaching is nation building. Okay, so here this teacher is more focused on developing skills that will be used for nation building. You have not really spoken too much there, so I can't tell exactly what your metaphor is. You're more focused on what the country needs and not what your individual learners need. Okay, but you have to put a balance between the two. There's the need of the learner to be developed as an individual before they can build the nation. Teaching is like firefighting. Wow. I wish you would explain why, so you can type in and tell me why teaching is like firefighting. Because when we look at firefighting, we're looking at a challenge. We're looking at something that we cannot control. Anything can happen in the classroom. I'm always struggling with my learners. I'm trying to quench fires. I'm trying to teach, but something is always going wrong, and I have to begin to quench fires. So, what is the perspective of teaching that is invoking? I'm so busy doing every other thing, I'm not able to do what I'm supposed to be doing. That's what it seems to project, but I don't know. You can type some more. Teaching is like a baking process. Okay, do I bake? I don't really bake, but I see other people bake. I hardly bake. Okay, so it's something that is prepared process by process, You first of all, maybe you bring your ingredients together, you mix them, um, you get mix them to the right mixture, you get your baking pan, step by step. That's what I see in your baking process. Your approach to teaching is that it's a step by step process. And we have another one. Teaching is like a doctor taking care of a patient. Hmm. That's an interesting one. What does it project to me? It means then that the learners are not doing very much. You are doing more for them. It's not so learner centered, but more like it's teacher centered. You're not facilitating, they're not discovering, you're just spoon feeding them. You're just so concerned they have to be okay, and you're doing most of the work for them. I don't know if that captures um, your attitudes or your perspectives, but somebody said mentorship. Teaching is mentorship. Okay. All right. So you're looking at teaching as a process oriented approach. You're developing a particular kind of learner. You're not concerned mainly about content, but you're concerned about developing learners who have certain skills. Thank you very much. So that was just an exploration of your assumptions about teaching.